It's a great time to open this session without the title. No, sorry. But this session's title is AI Generation, Rethinking Primary and Secondary Education. Yes, and so thank you for gathering here. And so first, let me introduce the discussion members here. And so the thing next to me is Professor Masami Hagiya from University of Tokyo. Okay, and next is Professor Passey from Lancaster University, and also the Professor Webb from King's College London. And so later I asked them to talk a lot. So please allow me to go on. Yes, and this session is. About the conversation. This session is conversation about the education and learning and also teacher empowerment in the context of Gen AI era. And as you know, the Gen AI is now changing the many things, and one of the things is education. And so this session, we want to talk about the moving beyond the discussion of AI just as a tool, but the decision focuses on the human agency and dignity in the age of AI. And we also aim to provide a compass for educators and policymakers on how to design K-12 education that protects and nurtures children's agency. And the central narrative will explore whether AI become a crutch that fosters dependency or a scaffold that supports autonomous growth. So please give your attention to each panelist. And in this session, we have mainly the three contents. The first is about the context, the social shifts, and redefining the goals of education. And the second content is risk. It's about the unseen risks to dignity and development on children's brain, on children's ears. And the final part will be the vision. And so this is about the protecting and expanding agency. And so this is almost all our discussion content. And the finally, that one thing I should let you know is it's a pity that we had one more member. Her name is Natalia Kosminia, and she's not here because her health trouble. So this is all members of discussion. So and final, I'm Toshinori Saito from Seisa University, Japan. Okay. So let's start the first content, okay? And so the first is about the context and social shift and redefining goals of education. So please start, Masami.
Yes, I'd like to talk about the context in Japan. So I'm currently the director of the Institute for AI and Beyond, and which is a partner of House Davos. So that is why I am here. But I'm also involved for a decade in high school education of informatics. And currently, I'm a member of a working group for updating the national curricula for primary and secondary education in Japan. And national curricula in Japan are updated every 10 years. So it is a typical example that change of education takes a long time. So actually, we are now discussing the curricula starting from 2030. And I'm a member of a working group for the subjects related to informatics, and from primary school to high school. And the subjects are expected to teach many things. For example, ethical issues such as copyright and privacy, and also media literacy, and also something about digital citizenship. And also the subjects should teach about technology, including computer architecture or networking, or programming, and also information systems. And now AI is added to the list of materials. That is because, as you know, Japan is a good example of matured and now decaying country. Population is decreasing, but productivity does not increase. So the government or the Ministry of Education consider that AI is the key issue to raise the productivity. And they recently used this phrase, advanced essential worker, which probably means digitally transformed essential workers with AI literacy in such fields like medicine, healthcare, or agriculture, or construction, or maintenance of infrastructures. So they want to foster such advanced essential workers. And of course, such advanced essential workers do not necessarily graduate universities. So education, primary schools, high schools are very important to teach AI to those essential workers. And now AI is added to the list of materials of the subjects. And however, carelessly teaching AI has the danger of reducing agency or dignity of children. So the teacher's role is very important to use AI to promote agency and creativity. And so that is why the subject of this panel is quite important for me, because I have to talk with the officials of the Ministry of Education to draft the next national curricula. However, so the risk of using AI, which might endanger dignity or agency of children, will be discussed in this panel. And I think the teacher's role is very important. So teachers should carefully use AI to promote agency or creativity of children. On the other hand, as you know, AI can teach basic knowledge and also basic skills to children. It's a kind of, AI can be a kind of individual teacher. So that will save teachers' time. And so that the teachers can focus on fostering agency and creativity and so on. So that is my opinion. And finally, let me mention one issue about using AI. So that is about assessment or evaluation of children or students. So as you know, it has become very difficult to assess students according to the outputs, such as reports written by students, because generative AI can easily write good reports on behalf of the students. So I think it is a big issue of how to assess students in this era of generative AI. And so maybe we have to develop methodologies to assess students with the help of AI. So that is what I want to say at the moment. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And so at the beginning of the section context, yes, the next speaker is Professor Passey. Please give your speech. Yes.
Okay. Thank you, Toshinori, and thank you, Masami. I'm in what you might call a beneficial position. Coming second, I can always argue with whatever's gone before me. But of course, with someone coming after me, that person is able to argue with what I say. So that's the context that we're in with regard to AI, I think. My field is technology-enhanced learning. My interest is in learning. So fundamentally, I come from a learning background. And I'm interested in how technology supports or hinders learning and teaching. And I've been looking at this through the concept of emerging technologies for many years. I won't tell you how many, okay? But it's many years. I've seen technologies come and go. I've seen technologies change, and I've seen technologies emerge. And generative AI is one of those that's happening now. You know, it's a very recent technology. AI itself is not new. AI itself has been around for some time. I worked with AI in 2000. Yeah? I was working then with a government department on looking at how AI might support aspects of teaching management. So that has evolved. Now we're in the field of Gen AI, generative AI, and that's different. It's exactly what it says. It's generative. It generates something. So you give it prompts, and it will generate something. It, therefore, is what I would regard as an author. What you get out from that is an authored piece of work. And the question is, how do you regard another author? How do you take forward another author's perspective and work with that? And how do children do that in terms of what they ask a Gen AI system to do in terms of what is generated? So for me, the learning is all to do with thinking about what Gen AI is. What is it actually doing for you? And how do you define it so that you can think about that in terms of what it means for learning? And for me, it comes from that concept of authorship. If we were reading something from someone else, if we were looking at an image from someone else, if we were reading a novel from someone else, how would we regard that? What would we do with it? Would we accept it? Would we not accept it? Would we question it? Would we think about it? Would we think about how it might be improved, what we would think about it, etc.? So I think this whole idea of Gen AI really needs to be put in the context of how we might define Gen AI outcomes. There are other issues that go with that, but I would say think about it as an author. And what would you do with that if you gained an output from another author? One of the key things that my background currently, by the way, is that I'm seeing the uses of AI in education, both through from nursery, primary and secondary education. And I'm seeing examples of this right across the board. And I'm seeing what I would regard as some good examples. And I'm seeing some alternatives. Okay? the things that I'm particularly fond of seeing is that idea of regarding it as an author output, and the fact that teachers are able to think about this with their children in terms of questioning what is there and being critical of what is there and its outcome. So I think that questioning and criticality approach is fundamental now. And that's something I think that is already happening in education, but I think it's something which needs to be promoted in education. It's something which needs to be brought to the fore. We've heard about concepts like critical thinking for some time. That's not a new idea or a new concept, but it's important in our current context where we're seeing authorship which is actually generated by individuals on a vast scale. And that can happen very, very quickly, and it can happen really within a lesson period quite easily. Several outputs could be created quite easily. So how do we regard that? How do we question what is there? How do we get children to question what is there? And how do we ask them to be critical? And how do we do that for children who come through from nursery to primary to secondary? How do we maintain that questioning approach? And I suppose it goes back a long time in terms of education. You know, Socrates brought in the concept of educational questioning. He used a questioning approach in education. So if we went back to Socrates, I think we, in a sense, we're looking at what was happening at that time. He was bringing on board a concept of education. And one of the things that he was mainly concerned about was this idea of bringing forward questioning and criticality, not just accepting things as they were and as they are, but thinking about what do we think about this? Do we think it's right? Do we think it's wrong? Do we think it's as good as it could be? Could it be better? How would we improve it? Now, interestingly, we're already seeing some Gen AI systems that are taking that approach. We're actually seeing the start of Gen AI systems that are bringing forward questions rather than answers. Again, this is something that we're seeing as emerging. And what I would say about Gen AI is it is new. It's only been around for a few years. And yet, even within those few years, we've seen a large amount of development. At the start of those few years, we didn't see Gen AI systems that were generating questions. We saw them generating outputs only. So we're seeing quite rapid development in terms of Gen AI. And we will see that over the next 2 years, over the next 4 years, etc. We can reckon on changes with regard to technologies, and particularly with regard to software and apps, roughly every 18 months. So as educationalists, as practitioners, as policymakers, with regard to Gen AI, we're going to have to be prepared to think about what's going to happen about every 18 months to 2 years. Is this going to affect what we think, how we approach this, and what it means in terms of how we work with children in classrooms? So I think that is important. I do want to go on probably to talk about this idea of what education is about and what education is for, because I think that what we're seeing in terms of Gen AI is sometimes a desire to ask education to be preparing children within a technological environment so that they can move into a technological environment. I think that is fair. What I think is unfair is to suggest that all children will end up in technology industry. So I think that education is wider than that. It's to do with preparing us for society. It's to do with us preparing for being ready to work in an environment with other people. And that is a particularly important area, I think. We mustn't forget that we're not looking to develop children to work with technology. We're developing children to work with other children and with other people. And I think in our particular societies, we need that. We need that to be continued. We need to work with each other. We need to be able to communicate with each other. And we need to be able to think and reason forward. And therefore, that questioning and criticality, I think, is hugely important. Now, I haven't talked much about the technology itself. Yeah? I've talked about the concepts of how I think Gen AI is already influencing what might be happening in terms of learning and education and where that might be going. There is more, you know? And I don't know whether you want me to open this up now or later.
Okay, yes. And
tell me, do I stop now or do I go forward?
Yes, it's a very right time. Yes, to,
okay.
Yes, to next, yes. So I think, yes, they are talking about several timelines. We need to think about the very short timeline and middle timeline and long timeline. And yes, education is a very complex phenomenon, I think. And also, especially Dong is arguing about the emergence of Gen AI. We have to rethink about the very basic of the question, that is what is a dialogue or what is a human dialogue is, and also the how important the human connection is, etc. And so, so after this discussion, and so the next point is risk. And is unseen risks to dignity or development. And so please give your speech, please, Mary.
Okay, thanks Toshinori and thanks Don. And I'm not going to disagree yet. I reserve judgment on that. Yes, I've been asked to talk about risks. But first of all, I want to say I'm actually very optimistic about AI. And I actually did my PhD on AI in education in the 1990s. And since then, I've done quite a lot of work on technology-enhanced learning, but also on computer science education. So one of my particular focuses at the moment is I'm a member of the steering committee of Informatics for All in Europe. I represent IFIP on that committee. And our goal is to develop informatics education across European countries. And European countries are very variable, so we have developed a framework that helps them to develop their own curricula in their countries to suit their particular situations. But we are absolutely clear that informatics is really important. So I'm coming from that background, and I may come back to that in a moment. But I've been asked to talk about risks. So as I said, I'm optimistic. I think AI is going to be, it already is, really important in the world. It's going to be really important in solving all the problems that we are creating for ourselves. And it's also already important in education. We're already using it. One of the things that I've been doing over the last couple of years is working with PhD students who are researching language learning in usually older students, usually undergraduates, but also looking at the use of some of these programs that help you to learn languages or to develop pronunciation at school level. And these things already work well. And teachers can send their students to use these programs, and that works well. And there are some areas of learning where systems that have built-in AI, and it's generative AI now, it's a mixture probably, but it does include generative AI, that's working well, and they're developing these skills. But there are lots of risks with AI, and particularly what I'm going to talk about is risks to students' cognitive development, and with that comes their agency. So what we have to do is we have to enable students to learn and to develop the cognitive skills and abilities and their understanding of key concepts. We are not going to say that they don't need some knowledge and understanding just because generative AI can tell them the answers. And we've got to gradually introduce them to the capabilities of AI so that they're able to, as Don said, to critically evaluate the outputs from the AI. But the risks are quite significant, that they'll become over-reliant on AI if we get this wrong. And of course, we have to bear in mind that students don't start in school. They start at home, and they're at home a lot of the time, and they are going to come into contact with AI. I was in a lesson the other day, and this was with 14-year-olds and one of my beginning teachers. And he's a teacher of computer science. So he was trying to develop the understanding in his class of what is AI, which is incredibly difficult to understand. And he was finding it difficult to get them to understand. But he had a really good activity. He was asking them to assume that Google Maps was not available to them, but they had to find their way across London. And then they said, oh, well, we'll look on the internet. No, there's no internet available. Next step was, OK, we'll take a taxi. Yes, well, you could take a taxi.
Take a taxi.
But how would you do it if there weren't any taxis available and you had to get yourselves across London? And gradually they got into thinking about using paper-based maps, using underground maps, and so on. But this is one of the skills that we've probably already lost, because they won't see their parents using maps most likely. They'll see them using Google Maps to find their way around, because Google Maps has been using AI for a very long time. Mostly predictive AI in the past, of course, but for years. So that's a skill that we've probably lost unless we focus on saying, yes, we do need those map reading skills still. So we have to think what skills are still needed. If we look at the actual risks that we know about, we know that brains change as a result of technology. There was some research quite some time ago by a researcher called Sparrow, who identified that if people had access to the internet, they didn't bother to remember things. And that's called the Google effect. So we know that brains can change. We know that brains are very plastic and they can change. So if students become over-reliant on AI, there is a danger that they'll lose their problem-solving capabilities, that they won't develop those. There's also, if they're seeing that AI is doing so well, and I think it is doing really well now, it's improving so rapidly, then why would they bother to think? They would lose confidence in their own thinking. And we have to be aware of that, that they may just think, well, I can just let the AI do it, so why should I bother? They also, one of the things you have to do to learn, it's not easy learning. There's this idea of productive struggle. It is a struggle to learn. And there's a psychologist who came up with this idea of what we want is either productive success in doing a task, or productive failure in doing a task. That's also okay, because you're learning while you're doing that task. And if you fail, that's one of the things that we do. We fail, and then we have to try again. So we want students to be doing this, to be struggling, because otherwise they will lose this capability. And then there's a problem, maybe shorter attention spans. And then there's the problem of motivation. Students need to be motivated to learn, and that's difficult when AI does things so well. So there's a chance that their sense of self-efficacy, their sense that they can succeed and that it's worthwhile succeeding, will be undermined by AI. And it might not be clear to them how it's worthwhile for humans to do anything, because the AI can do everything. I mean, maybe we're thinking some way ahead, but I don't think it's all that far ahead before AI can do so many things that why do we bother? So that would potentially reduce what we call their intrinsic motivation. They won't necessarily be motivated to learn. And then I think Don said a bit about this, so I won't say much about it.
Okay.
And I need to stop, do I? I was just going to mention they might
yes.
lose their collaboration skills and those kinds of interrelational skills unless we really focus on that. So the answer to this is that we have to make sure that we don't let them lose those skills. And that is going to be down to, I think we've all said this, teachers. Teachers are going to be really important going forward.
Yes. Yes, thank you. Yes. And so I want to ask you all about one thing, that is the listening to each of your opinion about the Gen AI education. The one question occurs in my mind, that the being productive is a good message for kids or not. Being productive, what is being productive means, and what the term productive should be understood in the context of education to protect the human dignity of kids and in the Gen AI era. So could you give your opinion? So Don and Masami.
Okay. So
sorry.
I may not answer your question, but
Yeah. It's live show. It's okay. Okay.
The subjects, we are discussing currently for the national curricula. The overall goal is to solve problems and eventually create new values. So problem solving and value creation are set as the final goals of those subjects. And so that can motivate children and students to do learning. And for that goals, generative AI is a very efficient tool. So because in a short period of time, so children will find problems and also finds a way to solve problems and actually implement the solution using generative AI. Because they may not need programming, but just ask generative AI to write code. So generative AI make that process of problem solving quite efficient. In that sense, very productive. So in that way, particularly teachers are quite attempted to use generative AI in their classes because they can motivate children, and quickly reach the solutions or final goal. So that is the current situation, but it has risks, of course. So it will make children quite dependent on generative AI, and so may lose basic knowledge or skills. So that's a problem, I think.
Yes. Okay, Don, please.
Yeah. In terms of production, in terms of productivity, in terms of output, from a learning perspective, I think what's important here is to think about whether that productive output is something which is going to go into working memory or into short-term memory or long-term memory. Now, if I were to ask you as individuals, where do you think your major learning experiences lie, and what is important to you in terms of your use of that learning, would you say that it's to do with your working memory? Would you say it's to do with your short-term memory? Or would you say it's to do with your long-term memory? Now, it's interesting that I'm already seeing some nods with regard to long-term memory. Now, we have to be careful with regard to motivation, with regard to productive outcome, and with regard to the generation of learning, that we're not focusing on only working memory. Because generative AI is something which gives us an immediate answer. How far do we keep and hold on to that in terms of it going into long-term memory, and what does it mean for us in terms of long-term memory? And that's why I would come back to this idea of questioning and criticality. Being questioning of something and being critical of something means that you're moving it potentially from working memory towards short-term and then into long-term memory. So if we want people to develop in terms of their long-term learning, then we cannot just focus on short-term memory. We have to be careful with that with regard to any technology uses, but certainly with regard to Gen AI, because we do have that potential that it could lead us to learning focusing on something which is readily lost, and which actually we need to re-encounter in order to use it again. You know, there is a psychologist. He was not too far away from here. He was in Austria rather than Switzerland, but never mind. Who said that basically, if you don't reuse something within a month, you will lose it. You will have to retry it. You will have to replay it. Now that appears to be true. Think about how you use a technology, for example, and how you use a function of a technology. If you don't use it regularly, do you remember it like riding a bicycle, or do you forget it? Have you moved it from working memory into long-term memory, in other words? Riding a bicycle, you might move to long-term memory, but actually the use of a particular function, which you've only used once or twice, is not going to go into long-term memory. So we do have to bear that in mind with regard to education generally, and with regard to learning generally. We're not going to be able to develop young people into adults who will be ready for society if we're only going to focus on short-term memory. That is not going to work for us in the long term. It won't enable questioning. It won't enable criticality. It will enable dependency. So I think one has to be careful about where that dependency and generative output come. I'd also say that with regard to productive output with Gen AI, one of the things which is happening there with regard to assessment is that my experience of seeing this in practice is that practitioners are moving more and more towards oral assessment. So rather than depending upon written assessment, they're needing to depend more upon oral assessment. Now, actually, from a learning perspective, you can argue that that's useful. Actually, being able to ask people questions and get them to think and provide an answer is constructive. It's actually generating, it's actually getting them to reorganize their thinking sometimes into an output, which can be very, very useful. So I think with regard to Gen AI, this is something that we need to be aware of, that we need to be aware of the fact that actually forms of assessment might need to shift in terms of moving some of it, at least, from written towards oral, so that at least we have some basis of different forms of assessment, different forms of ideas of what is emerging and what the outcome is. Yes. So I think that's probably what I would say on that. I could go on to talk more about the parental aspects, etc. But maybe I should stop there and hand over to Mary.
Okay, so Mary, please.
Okay, I'm not going to disagree again this time, so that's all good. But I just want to add to that, actually, that when we were talking about, I was talking about being productive in learning so that they actually learn something. What's important there is the process that they're going through, not the outcome from it so much. As they're going through this process of doing this task, they are learning, and that's what we want to happen. And of course, if it happens really quickly because they get the answer from generative AI, then that is useless. That is actually unproductive success, which is not what we want. because they're not learning. They're being successful in the task because they've got the answer from Gen AI, but they're not being productive in their learning. So I think that's what I'd want to say about, I could say other things, actually. Can I say something about computer science?
Yeah.
Why not?
Okay.
Because there is a debate going on. I mean, in the group that I work with, Informatics for All, we all agree that informatics is still really, really important and that students should learn to program.
Yeah.
And that gradually they should start to use Gen AI to support them in programming. But they have to develop this understanding of programming. Whereas there are other people in the world who are also computer scientists, and some of them are computer science educators, who feel that we might not need to learn to program. And I think they're completely wrong. I don't think there's anybody here who's saying that. So I'm not disagreeing with people here, but I do disagree with some of the people that I interact with, because they think, OK, Gen AI can do it all. But that's deeply problematic, because we want programmers, but we also want people who can understand Gen AI. And in order to understand Gen AI, they need to know something about how it works. And in order to do that, they need to know something about informatics. And they need to know something about how computer scientists developed AI in the first place, which was through programming originally. Obviously, it's very advanced at the moment. And this is one of the issues, that how do we get them to understand these more advanced things? But there are simulations that people can use to begin to understand how these things work. And if they've got the basics of informatics, if they understand something about how we think about a problem, how we analyse that problem in the real world, how we abstract from that to think about how we might develop programs to support that, and then design the program, implement it in some programming language in which we don't get bogged down in the syntax, because that's been one of the reasons why people struggle with learning to program. And then once we've implemented that program, they then test the bits of it, they look at the whole thing, and they evaluate it against what they were trying to achieve. That's what programming is. Don would probably say that's what computational thinking is, but I don't like the term computational thinking.
Okay.
I prefer the word programming, not just coding. That's just, we could just write a simple piece of code in HTML to do something. That would be coding. But we want to go through this whole problem-solving programming process, and we still think it's important.
Yeah. I have no objection.
Okay.
I have no objection, but I found many people, including computer scientists, who say that we don't need programming anymore. Just let generative AI to write code. So, let me think about another notions like machine code. So recently, even in computer science department, you don't teach programming in machine code, concrete machine code such as interprocessors. Of course, they teach the abstract or basic notions of what is machine instructions and how machine programs are written. But they don't do exercises for writing machine code. And so similarly, if you specify good prompts for solving problems, then generative AI can write, for example, Python program. Probably almost correct Python programs. So in that case, you don't need programming. But I agree that abstract notions of algorithms or computation models and so on should be taught, because they are basic for information technology. But if you carefully write prompts for generative AI, you can almost correctly produce programs that solve problems. So many people claim that kind of methodology, and so it's quite difficult situation in which text programming is really necessary or not. So I myself agree with your opinion, but because as I said, teachers are quite tempted to let children or students to solve problems. So it's a kind of balance. So how you use hours for informatics subjects.
So thank you. And so it's only 9 minutes. Yes. So please give me a question.
Can we have a question?
Yeah.
Let's have it.
Yeah.
2 seconds, no problem. I've been debating.
With or without Jenny?
Can I intro?
Just keep it
1 minute.
Okay.
Yeah, very brief. I'm Ukrainian, been doing a lot of educational stuff, previously businessman, so sharing all the concerns that you've mentioned, most of them. And I'm definitely for developing, as I call it, common sense. That's what we're lacking in the current education because we're not producing engineers. It's not typing or programming that's the problem. It's the idea that the person should have. Also, on the side note, you mentioned that we need to have checks of oral exams and stuff like that. I'm also the president of esports, that's gaming, and we had a problem that in female tournaments, it's only males participating. So we actually developed a system that checks a lot of online and webcam presence that might be used in something in AI and examination. I think just an idea. But my question is, if knowledge now is so on demand, including primary schools and so on, should primary and secondary education stop rewarding memorization and start rewarding curiosity, reasoning, understanding, real understanding, and so on, and assess that through some kind of tests and exams and verbal exams throughout of that? The obvious answer is yes, but my question is how?
So short answer is welcome. So please, Don and Mary. Yeah.
Okay, so yes. I think that coming back in essence to some of the speakers who were saying earlier, I wouldn't like to say that computer scientists or people who program don't think. I think they do think, and I think that they have thinking processes, and those thinking processes are to do with aspects like critical thinking, like computational thinking, etc. So there is a basis there in terms of how they are thinking, which is being applied in essence to problem solving. And that programming is something which is leading to that problem solving. It's something that is enabling that. Now, going back to your question, I would say, yes, what we need to do is very genuinely focus on questioning, critical thinking, and problem solving. We need to understand what computational thinking is. We need to make sure that it is clearly defined and developed. We need to make sure that the basis of that then can be translated through practices such as programming. We need to ensure that all of that is in place. But it's not only going to be to do with computing and informatics in schools. It's also going to be to do with other subject areas. And what we don't have at the moment is we don't have the research basis within those other subject areas to quite understand how we move forward with that.
Sorry.
Can we do it tomorrow?
Gen AI is new. Whenever you get new fields emerging, you tend to get two areas of attitude formed. Those who are advocates and those who are skeptics. And others then fall in between, but they're in smaller numbers. We've got to enable those groups to come together. And we've got to enable both the concerns about it and the benefits of it to be brought together and discussed. And that's to do with this idea. How long it will take? It will take us some time. It took us 25 years with the internet.
Can we talk about it in a minute?
Sure.
Yeah.
Let's do it.
So, okay, so one question, and so please answer, Mary, and this. So, yes, please. Sorry.
Benjamin. Just very quick question. Since you mentioned that you're changing the curricula in 2030 or every 24 months, are there any recommendations, and I'm a father of 4 children, so any recommendations you have immediately to teachers right now where you say, hey, Gen AI and everything is moving at such a fast pace, we will change curricula, but this is our recommendation right now to be changed on Monday?
Yeah, I can answer that.
Okay.
Let them experiment, let them try things out, give them opportunities, and don't put too much pressure on them. It is a bit challenging because some of the Gen AI systems are not very safe. So we have to provide systems that are reasonably safe. But there are some coming along, and there are some already in schools. Just give teachers freedom to experiment with these things and let them talk to each other as well, so that you have groups of teachers thinking about, well, what can we do with the Gen AI? How can we make this useful to students? How can we make it such that the students can then critique the AI in some way when it comes up with answers? And I could talk about examples, but I don't think I've got much time, have I, really?
3 minutes half.
Can I just... This is an example. It's not actually from a classroom. It's an example from a group of expert educators who got together to think about what will happen in the future. But it can already happen now, actually, in some cases. So we created this scenario based on what might happen in a history lesson. And I'm using history because it's a humanities subject, and I think it is really important that we develop these things not just in science and computer science. So in history, people have to learn how to evaluate historical evidence. That's one of the key skills in history. And so this example lesson, the teacher talked to the students about some of the work they'd already been doing about evaluating evidence in history, and then said, and you're going to interact with this generative AI, who is going to be Marie Antoinette. And they had to question this AI, and this AI was behaving as Marie Antoinette. But it was an AI that was getting information off the internet, so a lot of it was inaccurate. And then the students had to check the answers to see how accurate this AI was in the answers it was giving. How accurate was it in terms of Marie Antoinette? And then at the end of the lesson, the discussion was about not just historical evidence and how you evaluate that, but also about why the generative AI was coming up with a lot of this false information, because it was getting information from, it was getting data off the internet, and so all sorts of different bits of evidence that were not necessarily accurate. So she was able, in this scenario that we came up with, to not only teach about history, but also to teach about generative AI and to get them to be doing the critical evaluation of it.
Okay, so thank you. 1 minute and 30. Yes, you. Yes, very short question. Sorry.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Sorry, very quickly. I'm a mother of 4. Yeah, he said. And I'm a Brazilian teacher. And I would like to know, how do you see the classical education based on trivium, grammar, logic, rhetoric, the Greek model, in the context of mitigating the risks you mentioned?
Okay, Tim. Yeah. Only one sentence, please. Sorry. Sorry. I'm sorry.
One sentence.
Yeah.
Okay. I think we have to take the context that we're working in.
Sorry.
Take what we believe to be the foundations. What is it that we are aiming for, and what are the key features of it that we wish to uphold? And then, how do we apply any technology to that situation to benefit it? Not to replace it, but to benefit it.
Okay.
And to benefit it for the young people, not necessarily for ourselves. Okay. Yeah? How does it help those young people? And as a mother of 4, you'll be well aware of that.
Okay, so it's just the right time to stop and conclude our session. So thank you for coming here, and so thank you for giving your speech, and thank you for all. Yes.